Hi everybody, welcome back to the book club. This is the third post for Adam Willett's Leading the Unleadable, so let's get right into it. So for this past week we read chapters 3, 4, and 5. So we start off reading about having the mindset of a leader. That is because our mindset reflects our reality and our behavior. Willett goes on to list what he believes to be the tenets for the mindset of an exceptional leader. The first is appreciating diversity. Everybody comes from a different background, different religions, different cultures, different upbringings, different educations. So when we are communicating with people, both in talking and in listening, we're bringing all of those experiences with us. And all of that diversity comes into play when we're trying to understand people. There's both good and challenging aspects of that I've experienced myself. The good is those different experiences bring different ideas as long as you're receptive to it. But, like an example given in the book, I have also experienced people being subconsciously just unable to hear me or register and acknowledge what it is that I'm saying because of the filters that accompany our biases. And we have to be conscious of these types of things because we can miss something important when we are not conscious of our bias and not hearing what others have to say. We miss the opportunity to receive different types of people and different types of ideas. Another tenet to the mindset of a great leader is assuming that everyone has good intentions. We have to believe that everyone wants to be successful. They want the team to be successful. They want their work to mean something and to be good. That can be difficult when you keep running into the same challenges with the same people. But if you reset within reason, assume that the issues that are out there can be resolved and that they're issues that the people involved want to resolve. Believe that people are open to resolution and not just lost causes. Next, we read about accepting reality but not letting reality define you. I'm not entirely sure I agree, or maybe I misunderstand what Willett is saying here. You need to make an effort to understand what's being asked, to understand what the true problem is, but he kind of suggests pushing past it and using ideas and pushing techniques similar to Steve Jobs. I think that's one of the examples that he gave. So just put a pin in that for a second. Of course, you have to not ignore what you're seeing. You don't just read the metrics and move on despite the numbers telling you that there's something wrong. But when he goes on to talk about not letting reality define you and using Steve Jobs as an example, he's talking about pushing past deadlines, doing whatever it takes, or having the team do whatever it takes to meet a deadline, which I do agree with up until the point of exhausting teams. Maybe I'm a little biased because of the reputation of Steve Jobs and how his people felt working for him, but we'll move on. Next is setting a high bar and fostering a community of excellence. Willett is definitely a software development person because he uses a lot of software development examples in this book so far, but he talks about like building quality in, having a culture of building quality in, where if you work in software development, you know what that means, which is essentially at every stage, whether you're doing software development or not, at every stage, considering the outcome, considering the quality when you're developing, building that product or service. Next is the concept of gel teams, which of course I really like. First, what I already knew is leaders should not expect to do everything. I think a lot of leaders, particularly new managers, feel like they have to do everything, feel that they have to prove their worth. And the way that they prove their worth is by doing everything instead of being a manager and just making sure that the things get done. And this often impacts the ability to get things done because one person cannot do everything, right? And you have to learn the power of delegation. But Willett takes it a little bit further, and he goes on to say that delegation isn't even the goal. The goal is a self-sufficient team that can resolve their own issues, but not just production issues, but also interpersonal conflict, team conflict, being able to resolve that within themselves without having to go to a manager or the next level of leadership to get those issues resolved. And we need to not look at trouble as a bad thing, but as an indicator that something needs to be resolved. A couple of years ago, I wrote an article on LinkedIn about how the customer is always right. And what I meant by that is that the customer is always giving us indicators. Verbally or non-verbally, consciously or subconsciously, the customer is always letting us know if there is an issue that needs to be resolved. Conflict arises when we ignore it or do not effectively communicate back. Next is to own your power, which to me means to lean into the tenets. In chapter 5, we hear about having a radar for trouble. And this means spotting issues before they occur or spotting areas that are in need of improvement. This chapter is mainly focused on ways you can make yourself aware of issues. The primary one being talking with people. More specifically, listening to people, hearing what they have to say, hearing them out without any assumptions. You have to let people know not only that they'll be heard, but that they'll be fully heard. I think we as project managers often want to be available and we're ready to provide a solution, but we have to first be sure that we are listening to people. Then we have to make sure that they even want a solution from us. Sometimes they just want to be heard. Also, when they're coming to us, even if they want a solution, we want to be sure that we are providing solutions that aren't burdensome to the team. No one wants to come to you for a solution if your solution is always going to be burdensome. That is how we get into a situation where we have people hiding issues from us. For those who specialize in risk management, you may run into that a lot, where people don't want to report risks because of the overhead associated with resolving risk. Okay, and so now that we have talked a little bit about ways to spot trouble, what now? What do we do now that we've found out that there's an issue? We have to be sure that we address that issue. And it is a decision to take or not take action. However, it's probably better in most cases to take action for two reasons. The first reason being, if you don't take action, there's a high chance that that threat could turn into an actual issue. And the second reason is when people know that their leadership will not take action on issues, it affects the morale and energy of the team. And when we do decide to take action, we have to make sure that we are taking proper action and not just relying on impulses or assumptions when we are deciding on a course of action to take to resolve an issue. To properly address trouble, Willett recommends 4 steps. The first is understanding what emotions you are feeling and why. Make sure that you as the leader are recognizing any of your personal feelings of fear, rejection, or betrayal that may have come from the situation. He recommends talking with a trusted peer or just writing down your emotions. I do have a trusted cabinet of advisors, if you will, confidants, to talk about things that are going on with me at work or that are going on with my colleagues that can be trusted to provide unbiased feedback and not just fuel the fire. Next, you have to move past negative judgments or assumptions. The motive here is to eliminate any assumptions about what's causing the disruptive behavior, especially if this is new behavior, and be open to hear what is going on from the person. Next, you want to prepare a concise message. When you address a person, you want to eliminate the emotion of it and just stick to what you've observed and communicating that to the person. I recognize that preparing a message ahead of time might seem a bit formal, and for some to stop and do that every time might seem a little bit unrealistic. But I've used this even in the past week and something very similar when resolving issues in the past, and it works. Next, you want to set aside time to actually talk with the person about what's going on. You want to find a place where you and this person can meet privately, and you want a place where you guys can talk, right? No text message or email, because you don't want anything to get lost in translation. And this talk is where you'll go over your prepared message. You will offer them support and you'll give them an opportunity to speak. And you'll do that by listening and being quiet. And whatever comes from that meeting, you want to follow up and ensure that whatever the two of you agreed on is being acted upon. And this process is something that you eventually want to master, something that becomes second nature to you. All right, so that is the book so far. I have to say I was really skeptical about the book when I first read those with seemingly loaded reviews, but I kind of agree. So next week we'll go over chapters 6, 7, and 8. Tell me what you're coming away with in this book so far in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.